every single day.
People want to connect with someone who...
Self-expression is life.
It is the challenge. It's a challenge of life. You can't get mad at other people for not seeing your vision.
It was all about a grind. Like I said, I was selling CDs, DVDs, and clothes out the trunk of my
Whatever
car.
it takes.
This is for the people. Don't forget that.
Everybody, welcome back to the Hustle Chronicles podcast. I am here with Elliot, Chief of Staff of Authority Brands. Thank you so much. I know you are a busy man this weekend with all 15 brands here. If you don't mind just starting off who you are and how you got here.
That's right. Well, it's great to be here, and I appreciate Zach very much, and I always have time for Zach. That's what I tell him every time he calls me. He goes, "Zach, well, stop apologizing for calling.
Call too much.
I got time for you always." So Zach said, "I'm Chief of Staff at Authority Brands." So what that means, that differs for every Chief of Staff role. I primarily oversee our strategic direction with our CEO, Craig, as well as our acquisitions and integrations. Originally Canadian, so if you hear a little twine, I know Zach already knows this. It's because I'm from the friendly neighbors from the north.
First Canadian guest, too.
That's right. First Canadian to work at Authority Brands as well, too. That's right.
That's actually more impressive than 40 podcast guests in the first one being
right.
from out of America.
So now you got, some diversity to the podcast guest because of this Canadian from the north. So originally grew up in Canada, went to Queen's University up in Kingston, Ontario. I did a commerce degree, and then I grew up in Toronto. So I said to myself, there's two places that I could do finance, which is what I wanted to do. I could stay in Toronto, be with all my family, my parents, or I could go down to New York, right, and do something different, something new. So I always knew I would love to live in New York one day. Thought it was a great opportunity. I did some interviewing while I was at Commerce and at Queen's. Someone was silly enough to hire me, which was nice, at an investment bank down there. I did banking for about a year, learned a lot. As I think investment banking is a grind. I was fortunate.
It's an understatement, but yes.
It is. I was fortunate that I worked with some really good people there that actually made it pretty easy. I was essentially a glorified graphic designer for a year and a half. Made a lot of PowerPoints.
Hell of a PowerPoint.
I can make a hell of a slide, actually. That is true. I can definitely make a hell of a PowerPoint slide. Investment banking, young folks tend to do it for a year or two, and then they go to greener pastures. For me, that greener pasture was a private equity firm called Apex Partners. So Apex is a global private equity firm, dual headquartered in London and New York City. They manage about $60 billion of assets in a bunch of different sectors: services, consumer, technology, healthcare. And they were also silly enough to hire me 1 year into banking. So I started on the services team in 2019, November of 2019. I got put on Authority Brands as my portfolio company because Apex owns Authority Brands. And I worked with Authority Brands while I was there for 2 years. So I had a great experience at Apex, learned a ton. It was a crash course in everything from financial analysis to working with management teams to operations. So I think my intelligence level spiked during my time at Apex. The best thing that came out of it, besides learning so much, was the opportunity to meet great people at Authority Brands and work with the team there. After about 2 years, I approached my boss at Apex and said, "This has been great. I've had a great time at Apex, but I really like the Authority Brands team. What do you think if I would to go over and work there?" So he said, "I haven't thought about that. Let me think about it and get back to you." A couple of weeks later, he comes back to me and goes, "Look, if you want to work at Authority Brands, go for it." So I said, "Great." So called up the CEO, asked him very kindly for a job, and he was the third person that was silly enough to hire me. I've been working at Authority Brands ever since. I think summer of 2021 is when I started. I took 2 months off before, which was the best 2 months off I've ever had.
What'd you do?
Recharge. Went out to Oregon for a week to a little resort town called Sun River, which was awesome. Highly recommend it. Went with my girlfriend. We had a great week there. Flew to Breckenridge in Colorado. Went hiking with some friends. Breckenridge is beautiful in the summer. And then to San Francisco to see a friend for a couple of days. Back to New York. Hung out there for a little bit, and then went back to Toronto and went to a cottage with my family. Did a lot of biking up there, a lot of running. I had to lose all those pounds that I gained eating Uber Eats while I was at Apex. So I had a great summer, and that brings me here today at Authority Brands.
So did you start off as the chief of staff?
So I started off as the director of strategic initiatives. And then I was that for about a year. It was a little bit of a mouthful to explain to folks.
Yep.
And what happened was we were in a meeting with one of our board members, and we were going over org structure. It was myself, our former CEO, Rob, and then Silpa, who I think you've spoken to, our CFO.
She's been on the podcast.
She is probably the best CFO that anyone has ever worked with. She's amazing. And we were in this org structure meeting, and our board member said, "Hey, have you ever thought about a chief of staff to our CEO?" And our CEO said, "No, what's that?" And she was explaining to him that it's someone that essentially supports the CEO in whatever initiative they want to carry forward in the business. And the CEO at the time, Rob, looked at me and said, "Well, that's kind of what you do, Elliot. Do you want to be chief of staff?" And I said, "I serve at the will of you. So whatever you'd like me to do, I'll be it." So that's how I became chief of staff. That day I was chief of staff. And the chief of staff role actually became popular through a Harvard Business Review article back maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where it was a Harvard Business School professor made a case for hiring chief of staffs at the executive level. And it's been a popular title in the tech world for some time. Before that, obviously in politics, it's been a popular title. But the tech firms kind of took it over probably about 3-4 years ago. And now it's starting to enter kind of the private equity world as well too, where I've seen a lot more chief of staffs. And every role is a little different. Who they support is a little bit different. But it's nice because I get to kind of make the role into what I want it to be and what our CEO, Craig, wants it to be.
Yeah, and I know, obviously, you and I spent a lot of time together during the due diligence part, and now our professional relationship has turned into a personal relationship. I know Daisy well. You know Bobby and Steve well.
I love Bobby and Steve.
But, I think knowing you and knowing your role, it's changed dramatically just throughout the last couple of years, right?
Yeah.
So why don't we start off when you became chief of staff, right? You guys were in a super aggressive acquisition phase. You mind just walking through for our viewers, what does that mean when you work for a company that is acquiring all these brands?
That's right. So I think you probably talked about this on previous podcasts, but Authority Brands, home service franchisor, and we've grown through acquisitions. So we take really good franchisor brands that have been started by entrepreneurs like you and your brother Josh, and we go to the founders and say, "Look, we want to have you on board. We want to support your growth. We know you might be looking for an exit, either for some liquidity or maybe you're looking to help accelerate growth. Partner with us, right? You can become under the Authority Brands partnership and umbrella. You can stay on with us and support the franchise brands or the corporate locations that you support today, and we'll help accelerate that growth." So what my role looks like is everything from introductions all the way out to execution and then getting the deal closed and then also the integration. So the longest part of it is the relationship building, right? We start building relationships years before we ever acquire it. I met your brother in 2019 at a conference. He just got a small investment from someone and wasn't interested in selling.
Yep.
And I kept seeing him around, shaking hands, kissing babies. That's what I call it. And we try to make ourselves into the most favored nation at the time in which a founder is ready to sell. So when a founder is ready to sell, we're there. I always I always say honesty is the best policy. I want to make sure that when a founder is selling for the right reasons, I never want a founder to sell to us because I'm trying to force them into it.
Or they're desperate.
It's got to be good for them. It's got to be good for us. So when it was good for you and Josh at the right time, started the process. I know you guys hired a bank, which is a good move. We worked with the bank to structure a deal, and we're going through the diligence phase of getting a confidential information memorandum, or a SIM as it's known. We are analyzing the numbers. We're doing a legal review. We're doing a review on your benefits, your HR policies. We're really, as you know, tearing apart your company.
Oh, yeah.
And then we're structuring documents to actually do the acquisition with the law firms, all the way to, figuring out the last final details, and then finally shaking hands, sending a wire across, getting signed papers back, and we own Junk Loggers. So,
and then what does it look like after the acquisition happens? There's going to be a lot of people that watch this that are like, man, one day I hope to sell to Authority Brands. What could they expect after the acquisition happens in terms of the transition now from being a small company to being part of this large parent company?
Yeah. So something I always say to our founders that we acquire, it's a very stressful and unknown time for them, just as you said, right? Yeah. Many people who we buy from have never sold a business in their life. And I know that, and I try to walk people through it and tell them things that I would want to be told as well, right? I'm, as I said, very honest about what we do. I sometimes say to folks, if I was in your shoes, I would think about it this way. And I'm always trying to structure win-wins. So one of those is after acquisition, right? We tried to, even before we've closed the acquisition, give an overview to the founders on what they should expect.
Yep.
We do a call. I call it our integration call, where we walk through at a very high level what we're going to do post-acquisition. And the central messaging of those calls is nothing changes until it does, right? And I'm sure I told you that a million times. Nothing changes until it does. And what I mean by that is, the next day you're going to wake up and you're going to keep doing your thing. Right.
Yeah.
And eventually, yes, we are going to make changes. I also like to say the second part of that is nothing changes until it does. And the changes that we make are hopefully positive, and we'll work with you on them.
Yep.
So, we wake up the next day, nothing's changed. You get more in your bank account. And then, the following weeks after that, we'll do integration calls with the various departments, and we'll look at ways of what you're doing and if we can keep it that way, or if we need to tweak it to make it more in line with the other brands. So we try to make sure that we're doing everything with value creation in mind, right? To say if we're going to change something, there's got to be a good reason why we're changing it.
Right. We're not just going to do it.
We're not just going to do it. Exactly. It's got to be for the benefit of the company or the benefit of the people of the company, or something that's probably the hardest things to change is when we have to do something for the benefit of Authority Brands, but it's not necessarily for the benefit of the company.
Right.
That generally doesn't happen as frequently, but one example is like payroll systems, right? Changing a payroll system is a pain in the butt. We do it all the time because for the benefit of operational efficiencies, it's better for Authority Brands, right? For the actual founders, they're probably like, can I just keep ADP? They're good. I like the guys there, right? So those are the tough parts.
Pete's in the corner right now, shaking his head. That's amazing. Yeah, I think that was super helpful to understand. And I think my next question for you is like, I know for myself, especially, I know for Josh, we were never planning on selling, right? We were happy with where we were. But then after really explaining to you, the most important part of our business is our people, and we are not willing to give up the people that made us successful and made the brand successful. That really, when we got to that mutual agreement, that's when we started to take off and we're like, okay, maybe this is actually realistic. How did you guys realize that, right? Because that's a huge differentiator between you and other private equity firms. And
that's right. That's right. So, there's some private equity firms out there, and there's some aggregated firms out there that try to change a culture, and they try to push a culture on to the companies they're acquiring. In some cases, it can work, right? In other cases, it doesn't work at all. I know at Authority Brands, not only does it not work, we don't need it to work that way. I say to all the founders that we acquire, we've done our job right when you're, in your case, have your junk loggers flag in one hand and you have your Authority Brands flag in the other hand. And to us, that means that you have all the great parts of the junk loggers and all the great parts of the culture of junk loggers are still continuing post-acquisition, but you have the shared resources of Authority Brands that are hopefully going to be a benefit for you as well too. Meeting other people that are doing your position in other brands, whether it's larger benefit packages or marketing or whatever it might be. We want you to have the culture of junk loggers and the culture of Authority Brands. Right? It's very important to us. One of those aspects that's also very important to us is we always say, look, we know how to run a franchise. We have no idea how to run a junk business. You know how to run a junk business. Pete knows how to run a junk business. Roger knows how to run a junk business. So when we're doing acquisitions, sometimes we have to make some personnel and headcount changes. It's part of the nature of doing it. But generally speaking, we need a majority of people to stick around. Because we're a people business. What we do is people. We're acquiring a business and the people just as much. So we always, a key part of our diligence is retention and also negotiating with the founders on staying around and their roles and what that looks like after. In your case, you were great. Yeah, you took on a bigger role. So
and it was really amazing because that was like the first question I had for Josh when he's like, I'm going to do it. Do you want to get in on this? I was like, what does this mean for me? And he's like, oh, this is going to blow your mind, but they actually want to make sure you're going to stay, right? They're not just trying to acquire your business, your brand. They want to make sure you are willing to stay. And there's obviously different ways and aspects that they retain the original owners. But, I thought that was really compelling because we talked to a lot of private equity firms, right? And if Josh wants to close a deal, he brings in the closer, right? The guy who's going to cry, talking about his passion for the business. So I think the next thing I really want to talk about is like your style of buying founders and also the most successful franchisees. Why would you do that?
Yeah. Look, my style when I speak to folks is I just try to be as honest and upfront as possible, right? I know that it's a very emotional decision to sell a business. And I know it's not easy as well. There's a lot of factors that go into it. So I try to balance, moving with a pace. There's an old saying that say, all deals die with time. So we try to move with a certain amount of pace and keep the cadence going. But at the same time, I am always open for calling folks and being open to conversation. We had a brand that we acquired once where, it's a family-owned business, and it was a very emotional experience for them. And there's a lot of things in deals which are unnatural and hard. And sometimes it takes, I call it walking people off a cliff.
Yep.
Where, there's upset about certain terms in the agreements, and or sometimes there's just the unknown or not really understanding something. I find in my mind the best way to get through those is to be very patient, always have an open line. I always say, look, I know we can find a deal. There's something that's mutually beneficial for us in this. We just have to find the middle ground. And I am very confident we're going to find it. Yep. And so far, we found it almost every time.
Yeah.
Right. It's about honesty, hard work. And I say, no one's perfectly happy with a deal. A deal is about compromise. And I say, we will compromise as much as we can. And can I have your support to compromise as much as you can as well too? So it usually works out pretty well. I'll tell you, this is an analogy I use. I don't know if I used it with you. I think I may have thought of this after I acquired Chunk Buggers. But I say doing a deal, I say this to a founder, doing a deal is like climbing a mountain, right? You're at the base and, you're kind of walking up. It starts getting a little hilly. You're like, oh, this is fun. A little bit of a challenge. I got a whole day ahead of me. It's going to be a good adventure. I'm going to be with my buds. It's going to be great. And then it starts getting a little steep. That's when you start maybe getting the diligence request list. And you're like, oh, this is actually kind of hard. Like, this is maybe a little harder than I thought it was going to be. And then you're getting close to the end of the deal and it gets a little steeper, right? You're kind of nearing the top and you're like, oh my God, like, why did I do this? This sucks. Yep. And then you get to these other, like the last 3 days. You had this too in your deal. Oh my God. It's like the last 3 days, it's like the steepest part, right? You're like using your hands and knees to get up. The rocks are falling behind you. And you're like, this is the worst thing ever. I'm turning back. I'm not doing this. Like, this is awful. Yep. And that is the hardest part of every deal. But I always tell the founders, I say, look, you're going to hit that peak in a day or two. You're going to see the sunset on the other side of the mountain, and you're going to feel so good that you did it. I love it. So there's an analogy that's worked out very well for folks, and now I use it. For all your viewers, feel free to use it when you're with your founders.
I love it. I think one of the most impressive parts, and I really wanted to bring you on the podcast, was after we were acquired, the phone started ringing off the hook, right? A lot of them were my employees, other franchise owners, vendors, and it was pretty amazing, right? I would call you and I'd be like, Elliot, I just don't know, what should I tell them? Like, this is unknown for me too. And you're like, you know what? Let me come in, right? And then you came to the New York City office. Then you came to the Stanford office. Then you jumped on the phone call with other franchise owners. That's obviously very rare, right? Most of the time, most private equity firms are like, you handle it. This is why you did it. Like, how did you learn throughout the years that the best way to handle this unknown is for you to, also jump into these conversations?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I love interacting with people, right? Being in person, on the phone with people. It's the best part about what I do, and getting to learn from others and hear about their backgrounds. It's the best part about the job, right? I call myself like a closet salesperson. So, it probably started out of selfishness actually at one point in which, I really like to travel too. So I love to travel for work. So I was like, yeah, I can go visit you, no problem. And then when you get there, you realize the impact. I think it may have happened. I'm trying to think of the first brand where I went out to travel, maybe at Woofie's when we acquired Woofie's. I went to Ashburn as where they're based in Northern Virginia. And I met the team there and I realized the impact of being there and how appreciative they were. And also how I think folks, they see a big company that acquires you. There's a lot of misconception. There's a lot of fear of the unknown. People may have never been acquired by a company before. And putting a face to the name of the company, I find really helps. So by the time we got to your acquisition, we had many acquisitions to mess up before yours. So I learned it. Yeah, I learned that going there is the best way. So now I make a point of it that a couple days after acquisition, we try to get out there and have face-to-face time and open up and conversation. I think when I went to go visit your guys in New York City, I also live in New York, so it was I took the ferry actually, a short ferry ride away up to, you guys are in, where are you? Astoria. Yeah, that's right. In Astoria. I walked up those steep stairs in your hallway. I realized with your guys, like they were so passionate about the business.
Right.
They loved what they did. They didn't want the team to change. And I think, I didn't want the team to change either. Right? So me coming up there and saying, look, what you want is what I want. Right now, tell me all your grievances too, because there's things that you couldn't get before that we can now offer, right? Oh, your benefits were okay, not great. Well, look, we have great benefits, right? Let's get you on board on those benefits when we can. They all talked about how much they love working with Zach and Pete. I said, Zach and Pete aren't going anywhere. Maybe they'll spend a little bit more time in Connecticut, but they're not going anywhere, right?
It's so true.
And I think that they, correct me if I'm wrong, they walked away from that meeting and felt really good about the future and, woke up the next day and said, nothing's changing until it does. And everything that changes is for the best.
100%. I still remember all of them before being like, I don't know who this Elliot guy is, but he's gonna hear for what I have to say, whether it's nice or not. And I remember being like, can you just relax? Then you came in, you're like, absolutely not. Tell me exactly how you feel. And then I remember looking around, seeing everyone's face, like, wow, this guy's not lying. Like, this might actually be better.
That's right. So, that's right. Our CEO, Craig, is so good with people. I tell everyone, like, he's the nicest man you'll ever meet. And he's also taught me a lot too. And our former CEO, Rob, as well. He was an amazing guy, or still is an amazing guy. He was so good with people and making folks feel comfortable and showing that we're an organization that cares about who they work with, the employees, the franchise owners, and ultimately our success is everyone's success, right? We get paid a royalty based off of how our franchises are performing. If our employees aren't working hard and dedicated to the brand, we're not going to grow. So we are always thinking about our franchise owners, our employees, and making sure that they're on board and on the team, because we're all going to win together.
And apparently you have to be an Iron Man to be a CEO.
That's true. You got to be an Iron Man.
When Craig said that today, I'm like, I'm pretty sure they told me Rob was an Iron Man.
He was. Yeah. Rob ran 9 or 10 Ironmans. Craig is somewhere similar to that. I ran a 10K once.
You're almost there.
I'm almost there.
You're getting there.
Yeah, I'm not an Ironman guy. So, we've had some very athletic CEOs, or past 2 CEOs, very athletic.
So we've interviewed now, thanks to you, we've interviewed 6 presidents. This convention, we interviewed Silpa, now yourself. One thing that Roger and I talked about after we wrapped up all of them was it's pretty incredible that as we were interviewing each person, we started to see how people are grabbing talent and moving them around as they're starting to grow in value.
Yeah.
It's
cool, eh?
It's really cool. I loved it. And I think as you watch it, to me, it feels like this is like a mini series of all the 8 podcasts. As you watch it, you're going to be like, wait a second. Rob Palmer from Lawn Squad is being mentored by Stuart, and Jimmy took over
Stuart.
Exactly. So it's just so cool to watch. It obviously says a lot about Authority Brands. That's right? Because people aren't just trying to grow their value, their salary, and then dip somewhere else. How did this culture happen?
Yeah, I got to tell you this. You mentioned Jimmy, so I got to bring that up for a second. Did you interview Stuart yet? Have you interviewed him?
No.
All right, he's going to be the next podcast.
We'll get
him. He's a great guy.
After people watch all this, I guarantee the last 8 brands are going to want to be like, let's do this.
So I got a good story about that, and I'll introduce Stuart for hopefully your next podcast. So last convention, also in Orlando last year, Stuart was announcing that, Jimmy was the longtime SVP of the brand, and Stuart was announcing that Stuart became the executive vice president and Jimmy was going to take over as the president, right? And Jimmy's been working there for like 15 years, was a franchise owner before, super dedicated to America's Swimming Pool Company. And I was at the conference, and Stuart got up there and said, look, when when Authority Brands bought America's Swimming Pool Company back in 2018, I needed 3 things. My partner, Tom Swift, who's also now an executive vice president, and Stuart sold it to Authority Brands. They needed 3 things, right? They needed it to be a win for themselves personally, a win for the franchise owners, and a win for their employees, right? So they said, obviously it was a win for us because we wouldn't have done the deal if it wasn't.
Right.
They said our franchise owners are happy. We've grown the system by double. We have 20 franchise owners in the $1 Million Club, and our employees are happy. And something that they said when we got acquired is there'll be room to elevate. And we always said there's room to elevate and room to grow. And, then Stuart got a little teary. Yeah. And he said, it's my honor to show you that here by promoting Jimmy now as SVP of the brand to the brand president. I remember all the franchise owners gave a standing ovation.
There's no doubt in my mind.
And it was such a nice thing, both for American Swimming Pool Company and Jimmy and Stuart, but also for Authority Brands to show, what we were able to promise to ASP, American Swimming Pool Company, has, really happened. So I always say during our acquisitions, Junk Luggers has one chessboard, right? Josh and you're thinking about your chessboard and where you're going to put your people, and there's only so many spots. And when you get acquired with Authority Brands, there's now 16 different chessboards, or maybe even more than that, 20. There's a lot of chessboards. Yeah. So we have the opportunity, when folks want to either elevate into roles that oversee their current roles, or sometimes even totally pivot. Yep. We have a marketing manager. Her name is Michelle Novi. She's great.
Michelle. Third podcast.
Yeah, really? Yeah, everyone loves Michelle. Yeah. So you may have already heard this, but she was at Woofie's, and she was the marketing manager at Woofie's in the Ashburn location, and she then expanded to take over a few other. I think she took over Junk at one point.
She came to.
Yeah, the Junk Luggers corporate locations and a couple others, and recently she was promoted to Duty Calls marketing manager. Yep. Which shows, she had these goals of elevating and learning more and, accelerating. She's been a great example of someone that's been able to pivot brand by brand. Yep. And I think she's super happy. We're really happy. You might be a little sad because she doesn't work for you anymore.
I really tried very hard for her not to leave our brand.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Anyway, she's still in the family, so still good for all of us and good for her too.
When you think about the future, right? I know when you started, there's how many brands you guys had?
When I started at Apex, there was 7.
And now
we're at 16.
What does the future look like? If you were to paint a picture for the viewers, what do you think Authority Brands is going to look like a couple years down the road and maybe, long term? Yeah.
Look, we're still acquiring brands, right? So we're looking for recession resilient brands, right? Brands that are either needs-based or recurring revenue. Junk luggers, obviously people need to, get rid of junks when they're moving, or if tragically someone passed away. That's needs-based service. We're looking for other needs-based or recurring services in a bunch of different verticals that we're not in. I think we could be at some point in 25 verticals, right? Oh. So looking for new brands as well too, but also, probably even more so, looking to improve the brands we already have. Yeah. Growing more dots on the map, helping our franchise owners dominate in their local market, and ultimately having each one of our brands become number 1, 2, or 3 in their category and dominating across the U.S. A lot of things we can do for that, right? We're trying to do more, lead maximization to make sure every phone call or online lead that's coming in is being handled properly and converting. We're doing more national accounts. We're trying to improve our marketing. So all these things that we're doing to improve our local base, and then obviously looking for new franchises. And then I am also looking for new franchisors. So if you're a large franchisor out there in the home services space, needs-based or recurring, would love to chat with you. A little pitch for myself.
Especially if you live in a cool location.
Cool location.
You get to go visit.
Screenmobile, Palm Springs, best location that we have. All the other ones are in, Ohio and Pennsylvania and Connecticut. Yep. So.
And Elliot came to our last, official last Junk Luggers convention. That's before. Right. And I'll never forget, it was 1:00 in the morning. I got Elliot addicted to the craps table.
I was at the craps table.
And he's like, I'm leaving here to go do another acquisition. I'm like, yeah, wait, what? You just finished this one. So, so that was an amazing story. If you could have a billboard anywhere in the world, what would it say and why?
Wow. Billboard anywhere in the world.
Obviously paid for by the Hustle Chronicle.
By the Hustle Chronicle. Will you do it? Depends on how good what I say.
See how successful we are down the road. We're still being funded by me.
Yeah. This is your charity work.
Right.
Look, I was always taught growing up, and even now, your reputation is one thing that you have that if you lose it, you're done. You can never get your reputation back if you lose it, right? So I'm always under the mentality of do the right thing, right? Do the right thing. So I always try to do the right thing. So I'd put up a big billboard to inform others what I try to live by, which is do the right thing.
And where are we putting this?
Oh, definitely in Toronto, my hometown. So I'm a boy of the 6. Shout out to Drake, Justin Bieber. else. I don't know.
Those are the big ones.
Those are the big ones. Exactly. So if Drake watches this podcast, he'll know he can come over to my parents' place anytime he wants. But yeah, put it in Toronto, downtown Toronto, my hometown, great city. And I would say do the right thing in hopes that others also do the right thing.
It's amazing. Two things. One, if people are interested in reaching out to you, how's the best way? And I think the most important part is if people are interested in working for Authority Brands, what positions are open and what's the best way to get in contact?
So Zach doesn't know this. I'm going to say it here on his show right now. Zach has now become my new admin. So please reach out to Zach. No, I'm just kidding.
Not going to obvious.
No, LinkedIn's great, right? We post all of our jobs on our Authority Brands LinkedIn page through our career portal. So reaching out there is a great way. You can also catch me on LinkedIn. Happy to reach out there, comment on this video. I can reply back on the YouTube account I haven't logged into in 5 years.
Roger will also put up your LinkedIn.
Okay, great. Roger will put up my LinkedIn. Yeah, you reach out on LinkedIn. Would happy to chat. And I kind of see myself as air traffic control, which is I don't really know a lot about things, but I know the people that do know the things.
And what positions are you guys looking to hire right now?
Oh, I think you talked to Silpa, and she's like, accounting. All right. Well, you need accountants. If you're an accountant out there, we need you. But look, it's, we're such an exciting business that we're growing so fast that things come up that, we might not even expect come up. For an example, like, we're thinking right now about hiring someone who's a specialist in direct mail, right? That, a year ago, we would have said, we might not need that. But then a few months ago, we said, we really need someone who's a direct mail specialist. So keep checking back. We have people that leave for family reasons or they move or whatever. They get another job opportunity, which is great. We're a big organization. Our marketing team is huge. Our franchise development team is big and growing. Our IT team is big and growing. So really anything under the sun. If you're interested in home services, keep following our pages, right? You can follow our Authority Brands page, but also all 16 of our brands plus Successware, which is our software platform, and Bimax, our procurement platform. There's tons of opportunity across every field. So we'd love to have you check out our LinkedIn page, stay in touch. And hopefully if you're watching this podcast, we might see you on the floors of one of our offices at some point.
There we go. You have any questions for me?
How'd you get so good at this?
Just like anything else, right? You just most people are like, oh, I should do a podcast. So I feel like when Roger, how long you been working here? 1 year, 2 years, 3 year and a half? I was like, you're going to help me make a podcast. And he's like, I don't know how to do that, but I'm interested in doing it. So I think we weren't afraid. In the beginning, it was begging people to come on. It was hitting up different contacts I have where there was mutual people. And I was like, I want to have that person on. Now it's been great where people are really enjoying the content and they're reaching out being like, hey, do you mind if I introduce this person? They want to come on. They want to do a plug for, this new venture they're doing. So this is not just for podcasting. This is not just for business in my mind. This is for anything in life.
Yeah.
The hardest part is just starting.
That's right.
And I remember at the time when I first started, Pete, obviously Lon, everyone knows Lon by his point. They're like, what are you doing? You are too busy as it is. You're dealing with health complications. You have a brand new kid at home. But I think, the most exciting parts in my life are the ones that I'm not good at.
Yeah.
And just learning, right? Like I'm that kind of person that I'm just obsessed with learning. So for me, I've always been obsessed with listening to podcasts. And I thought to myself, there's the Joe Rogans, there's the Tim Ferriss, there's Instagram for entrepreneurship, but there's no one really explaining like how you get from $5,000 to $1 billion, right? They only talk about when you're successful.
When you're there.
So I wanted to focus on like the nitty gritty part of what it really takes to be successful.
That's right.
Not the flashy part.
You do a great job at it. And I know that you also with your employees, you were telling me once with your employees, you do education with basic things that, might seem like for someone like you, what might be basic. But for them, it's a huge amount of learning. So you're a great educator and, you service your community well. So we appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, of course.
That wraps up the Hustle Chronicles podcast. Elliot Rosenbaum, Chief of Staff from Authority Brands. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We love you. We thank you. Not only from the bottom of my heart. This would have honestly never happened if it wasn't for Elliot. Elliot decided that he needed the Junk Luggers because he used us and also was obsessed with Remix Market.
I love it.
So it just shows you that if you want to be successful in life, just do a great job at what you're doing and don't expect to get anything out of it.
Right. Thanks, Zach.
Thank you, everyone.